welcome back to another episode. This is here on Scene TV, and we're going to change the name of the program. We had a long discussion about that earlier, so we'll talk about that in a minute. This is Heather Laux and Jeff Clark, and we're going to come to you today. This week we're going to talk about community, but first I think we're going to spend a minute about the name of the show and the program.
Right.
So we came up with Wayfinders, being aware of your way, and reset your compass. Or did I say that right? Or your compass reset.
Compass reset.
Compass reset, yes.
Okay. And I think, would you tell, why do you think we came up with a new name here?
Well, the crossfire idea just basically was, I think, too aggressive, and it dealt with politics, and it was more of a frustration because there's little you can do about a lot of those things within your own life. Mm-hmm. This concept says let's identify areas that you can affect your life and what you can do about it and how to improve it. But first you have to be aware of where you're at and what things are going on with you specifically. And then you can figure out what to do about it, which is how to reset and go in whatever direction you want. How to do
By
it.
your dreams and goals, or yeah, perfectly.
Okay.
Yeah.
How would you describe how to get there in terms of wayfinding?
Well, I think we're all very involved in our own lives, and we want to share our wisdom. So that's how we got together here, and we wanted to relieve. I remember when I first came in, and you guys said you wanted to be less stressed because the show was stressing you out because it was just so stressful. It was so chaotic. So you wanted to find a different way of doing that. And so you invited me, and I thought it was a wonderful idea to share our knowledge, and that's about the wayfinders, and that's an ancient term. Mm-hmm. And in the Native American, they call it twisted hairs, whereas these wise beings would go to other places, share their wisdom, gather the wisdom of those people, and bring it back and disseminate it, share it with everyone.
You know,
When they traveled, and this is what we're doing.
I had was looking at a tape of Dr. Wayne Dyer talking about a similar situation to this, and he was saying that in a poem, a woman wrote this poem where she said she would walk down the street. Do you know the poem? She would walk down the street, she would see a hole, she would fall in the hole, and she'd have trouble getting out. The next time she walked down the street, she pretended she didn't see the hole. She fell in the hole, had trouble getting out.
Okay.
And the third time she came along, she was aware of the hole, so she walked around it. So I don't think that was a good way to go, right? And then the fourth time, she walked down a different street.
There you go.
Yes.
So there was awareness there. This is what we're talking about. Okay, people have to know where they are on their own path.
Right.
Their own path. If they have a goal, which is, Heather's going to talk more about goals too, where you have the goal, and you're going in a certain direction, but are you on that path? Are you? And we talked earlier, how does a person know that they made the right decision? And in my view, a right decision is something that brings you closer to the goal. So A, you got to have the goal, and then you got to be aware of whether or not your decision is bringing you towards it or away from it.
Right. Are
Okay.
you moving in the right direction? And if not, what are you going to do about it? I mean, an airplane's off course most of the flight, and it's constantly adjusting because of other forces around it to get to where it's supposed to go. And that's all it is. It's just saying, okay, I know where I am, I know what I'm trying to do, and making those evaluations. How am I doing?
So now when we talk about our program, we were doing the 6-part main chapters, and we're at the last part of the main chapters, which is today going to be community,
Right.
right? And then we're going to go around the dial here, and I'd like to know who wants to jump in on the first item.
I'll start.
We both looked at
My
her.
favorite.
We both looked at her.
Well, because it's my favorite
All right,
subject.
you go ahead.
Community. And the constituents of the community make up the community. So I'm all about people and communities. I just love communities. You had something really wonderful to say about that, the definition of community. And I really would like you to read that.
Okay, it starts with the fact that with communities, a strong social and aesthetic foundation is critical to building a healthy and sustainable economy, and not the other way around. And I think that sticks with many things that we find in life, is
Yeah.
the foundation is critical. You know, the old biblical comparison, if you build your house on sand or if you build on rock, but you have to be aware of that to start with. And I think that's what we talk about a lot, is that awareness of where you are.
Right. So I love how you say build your house on the sand, or on top of the sand, or on the rock, or on the stone. Those are Mother Earth's elements. And I believe that when we incorporate her into anything that we do, it flourishes because it's in sync with us.
Right. We
'Cause
should
we're of
always
the
try
earth.
to be compatible with
Right.
our surroundings and
Yes.
the world around us.
And that's where we start, with our natural environment and recreation.
And
That's
the
perfect.
foundation is kind of also the goal. One thing I wanted to add about the name Wayfinders that we put in, we hit across, I thought was really important. Everyone out there that's watching are Wayfinders. They go on this journey with us. We bring in people, other Wayfinders, who come in and help us on the journey. We try to facilitate the discussion. So we are all, us here doing the show, the guests that come in, and the people that are out there watching, all are going on the same journey. They all becoming Wayfinders themselves, finding their own way, and then finding their way as a community,
Yes.
which is why we're on this subject today.
Right. One of the things I'd like to mention is Randall and I have been working a lot with SEAT and Youth Build, which is Social Enterprise and Training Center, and Youth Build, and we had a conversation yesterday that I think is important, that relative to the foundation and making that evaluation of your environment. I had a note from before about whether you're being propped up or the energy is being sucked out of you in your environment. And these kids that we're talking about in these programs normally are in environments that are challenging as all get out.
Yes.
And they spend so much just to get through the day,
And survival.
it's hard
Yes.
to imagine getting ahead.
Right.
And I think that's important for people to, have some perspective on.
And one of the ways they do that is the next key on our dial. The
Yes.
organizational identity and leadership. Peers, who you choose as your peers in your community and in the organization that, like you say, Youth Build, SEAT, or any of the things you work with. Leadership. I mean, how do you get out of that hole if you're
Well,
living
it's
in the
tough.
hole unless you see an example of something that's different?
So role models are important in this arena.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Leadership skills.
Finding
the people,
someone-
Yes, people who want to be your mentor. People that you like doing something, go find someone else that does that same thing.
And making the right choices. So if you choose a peer, for example, or a mentor who's a drug dealer, you may end up in the wrong
Yeah,
business.
you might be going the wrong way.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a cartoon. I think it's a Dilbert cartoon, but I'm not positive. But there's somebody in a hole, and there's two options. And one is, I'll bring you a cup of coffee, or the other option is, I'll bring you a ladder.
Yeah.
And those are, here, I'd like you to stay in the hole, so I'm going to make you as comfortable in there as I can. Or I'm the kind of person who's going to say, let me help you get out of there.
And some of the tools that people need in finding their way navigationally, we were talking about the need to have a map, which you have to have a goal. So you know where you want to reach on the map, or where you're in life or anything else. You got to have that. That's the beginning point of every achievement, is having a goal.
Can
Without
I just,
that,
can I
you're
just
not
say
getting
that I
anywhere.
use the word dream instead of goal?
Okay.
That's okay.
I feel like it's, goal is more business oriented, and your dreams and goals, if you say dreams and goals, you bring in yourself, your innate self of what you're good at, what you were born as, what you came here to do, who you are. Yes, you can have goals that match those dreams, but I think they begin with your dreams and your desire to have those dreams fulfilled. those become your goals,
Right.
right?
Yes, and so in this term, where we're talking about identity, leadership, peers, and all that kind of thing, and getting out of that hole, so to speak. So it's important that people pick the goals,
Pick,
dreams, organizations, or whatever, that are going in that direction.
and that are in sync with you.
Yeah.
Right. One of the things I found in doing some of the research I did for this topic was the fact that, we love to put people on a pedestal who are self-made, and they've done it, all by themselves.
Nobody does
And
it by themselves.
the piece says, that's a bunch of baloney. Nobody
Yeah.
does it all by themselves.
Never.
And, so, if somebody's out there and you're feeling stuck, you got to find somebody to help you
Yeah, call a friend.
somehow, some way.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and that people love to help other people.
Absolutely. Because we love help.
What's interesting
We-
is
we
that
know.
was actually the next thing on our dial.
That's
I
where
know,
I
it
thought
was
we were
funny.
It
going.
went
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
It was very good.
It was perfect.
Perfect, huh?
Yeah, because the next thing on the dial is citizen participation, sense of purpose and respect, right? Knowing where you are on that path, being able to have a sense of awareness of where you are on the path,
Yeah.
has a sense of accomplishment that goes with it and a sense of purpose that gives you that drive a little bit, to go get up in the morning and go out there and, lace up your shoes and do your thing.
Yeah.
And finding the right groups that we were talking about, finding the right purpose, but knowing how you're getting closer to the purpose gives you a little bit more drive
Yes.
to follow.
That reminds me
Find
of
your fire.
Somebody that we were told about yesterday from Youth Building Seed. This one person came to the program and was not ready emotionally. They just were not ready to take the responsibility
Got
to
it.
to go through the program, and they failed. And then matured grew or whatever, and realized that I got to go back and I got to do it this time.
I don't think they failed. I think they were practicing and they were learning.
That could be, but the end
I think
result
some
is
people have to learn how
they're now
and they
in a
have to
very
practice.
responsible job
Nice.
and doing fine.
Nice.
But they had to go through that first challenge in order to realize how critical it is to go do this and get some help.
And now they're giving back to the community that helped to get them out of the hole.
Exactly.
Yes.
So give that giving back,
Paying
so
back,
sense
yeah.
of purpose and getting closer to your goal, and then part of the reward is giving back to the community that helped you out of that hole.
Law
in
of
the first
reciprocity
Yeah.
place. So
and
we're
the
going.
law of cause and effect.
How do we deal with the turmoil and trouble we are faced with every day? How do we find the personal strength to move our lives forward against the many headwinds that seem to conspire against us? It isn't a secret, it's simply a journey, and that's life. Our goal is to help you map out your personal path to a complete concept of who you are and want to be. The thing is, this project requires money. We can't do it without help. So we're going to reward your support with access to a variety of sources and provide discounts on programs. Go to www.communitymediaservice.com and send us $20 to make the initial friend list, or give $50 and you'll be placed on the special friend list for ongoing benefits. Help us make this happen. Help yourself, help others. Join us on this special project. Go to www.communitymediaservice.com and click your choice, either $20 or $50, and stay tuned for more.
We're going to go on to healthy family and lifelong learning. That's something that
Well, we were talking about that with the boys. You're saying, the kids live in families that probably don't promote good sleep, good eating habits, good,
That's probably partly because of the way they were
Of
brought up.
course, it's a
You know,
generational thing.
Yeah,
It goes
those
back
cycles,
eons.
and it's not their fault.
No,
That's just the reality.
but it is their responsibility to get out of it if that's what they want to do.
right.
If they're
And
feeling stuck, get help.
to find a way.
Find a way.
reach out to.
Find your way
Yeah.
to reset your compass.
And knowing that your family and your family history and your community and community history, you know, being that we're on community, it helps to educate you towards how sometimes things are done.
Yeah, because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And to become educated on something that you want to do is only enhancing your own innate giftedness. Because you wouldn't be interested in it if you didn't have it inside of you.
Yeah.
You just wouldn't be.
Well, I remember, this is going back a long time ago, there was a guy in this area who did a psychological business training, whatever you want to call it. And I should have researched this because I'm probably going to get it right, but the happiest people in the world are those who don't know and don't know they don't know. Because they haven't got a clue.
But are they oblivious?
Yeah, they just don't know. But if you don't know and you don't know, is where you start to get out of your comfort zone and say, wait a minute, I need to, and then, so if you don't know, that's the first step in moving forward.
To awareness.
Yeah, and then there's other steps in between. And the final phase in his description was those people who know it so well they forgot they know it. And it's
True, it's
just,
innate.
you know,
It
such
just
a
comes
part
out.
of them.
Yes.
But, you know, there are steps along those ways that
So let's go on to the next section, projects, services, and mobility.
So I said mobility about transportation. So do you live in a city? Do you live in the suburbs? Do you live in the country? Do you live in the boonies? Do you live up in the mountains? Where do you live? Do you live on the ocean? Do you live on a boat? Where do you live? And the mobility of anyone in a community. Because you have to be able, a lot of people like to work and live in the same place. I do. I love working and living in the same place. I've had my own business in my own home since the 80s. I had a garage and a gas station and a house. I still have my own practice in my home.
Like in this community, for example, you have the public library, you have,
What do you have?
other things that do public events, you have other groups that help you with certain things,
Yes.
education, even with, food and all these, there are organizations out there that there's some leadership and some involvement, and you can help out in those organizations.
you can
But
volunteer.
you also can get help from them.
Yes.
See, I'm more of a gypsy, because I've lived, I started out in Cleveland, moved here when I got married,
City.
yeah. We moved to Princeton, New Jersey. We
City.
moved back here, we moved to Wichita, Kansas. Then we moved to
From Princeton
Hershey,
to Wichita, Kansas?
yeah,
Okay.
and then to Hershey, Pennsylvania, and
You've
then
moved around.
back here. But we have, because of the lake that my wife grew up on and we've been part of, and our kids have grown up there, we have that constant community that we, my kids always say, that's really home.
Yes.
Wherever they are, that's the home, because that's the community that has helped them grow and helped, supports us and everything else. So you can go wherever you need to go, and you can find some community to help
So
you
do your
there.
kids come back because of the lake, because of the water, because of the family orientation to that? Because I look at this and I wonder about communities where most communities are losing their young to other places. And I look for things to bring them back to their home communities. I think my home is right here in my heart. So anywhere I am, I'm home. But most people don't think that way. And they think of their hometown, and I want them to come back and benefit their hometown. Because I love having my family around me. I love having my kids around
One
me.
way I think it's important for people to do this, it's a lot what you described. Each time you went to one of those places, you became almost like a tourist in your new environment. And you check around to see what facilities are out there,
Right.
what community events, what so on. We advocate
There's
people
tons.
be a tourist in your own community and find out once and for all what's out there. If you're into geology, the oldest artifacts in geology in the history of the world, the oldest tree ever found in the history of the world was just 20 miles from here.
Really?
If you're looking into history, there are many ways it'll show you that the American Revolution was won in upstate New York.
Yes, that's.
Okay, if you're interested in history. If you're into industry, GE and the Industrial Revolution, the Mohawk Valley and the Erie Canal, huge piece of the history of
We
the
have a
evolution.
lot of history here.
There's a lot
yes.
of depth
And
here
people-
of
Yes.
all sorts.
And people
Old.
don't know that, so we recommend them being a tour, get a tour guide of upstate New York and go around and inspect and view these things.
And new things come up every day, too.
Yes.
Yes, and we still
Right.
haven't touched on economics, growth, and development, which is a good fit for where you were going, is that there are opportunities, work opportunities, if you have some idea. You don't have to work in exactly this little narrow field. You can take things that are associated with it. You can find other opportunities. Again, it goes back to getting help from somebody who knows sort of the direction, knows what's out there. And there's plenty of people in this area who are more than happy to help.
There are a lot of resources
Yes.
that people need to get out there and find them.
Yes.
But if we go back to the beginning of the conversation, which says, if you want to find your way, you need to know where you're going, or you need to have as you say, a dream, I say a goal.
A
You
path.
have to have,
A pathway.
you have to be going somewhere,
Right.
okay, in order to be able to get there. And sometimes you can go and you can research it a little bit in your own community and find out other people who are on a similar path.
I think it's important to research.
Yeah, and having a feeling for, so one of the things we talked about several times, and we'll bring it up again, so people need to find out what it is that they're interested in, what they care about, what moves and what motivates
Yep.
them. They need to find
What
this.
moves them? What lights their fire?
They need to find it.
What bubbles up and makes you feel giddy and happy, or enjoyment and peace when
I
you're
think
doing
one of the
something?
things that is so obvious and often we overlook it is the library.
Yes.
I
You
love
know,
the library.
If somebody is trying to identify something,
Yes.
there's these buildings that are all
Great
over
resource,
the place, and you can go ask somebody and say, "Hey, this is what I'm trying to find out. Can you tell me where I can find information on that?"
I had
And it's their job to do that.
Exactly.
They're
I had
wayfinders.
an interesting conversation with a librarian about something like that once. Say, if you got stuck on a deserted island and you could only bring one book, what would you bring with you? And I'll tell you what the librarian told me. She said she would bring a dictionary, because a dictionary has all the words and the meanings of all the words, and that she could get deeper and deeper into that. But if you went somewhere else, like if it was Heather would say, "I'd go into if I'm in nature, I
Yeah.
don't need a book."
I don't need a book.
So everyone,
I want a book about how to build a boat.
so yeah, everyone is going to have a different answer to the question of what their goal is or what's important to them or where they want to be, and that really is the starting point of all achievement, of everything that you might do, is having an idea. So knowing yourself. One way of doing it, I use my way, and then I'd like you guys to jump in on that. One way of doing it is to look at the things that have always interested you, maybe even throughout your whole life.
Yes.
Okay, maybe when you were 4 or 5 years old, or 6 or 8 or 10 years old, what are some of the things that piqued your interest throughout your life? Or what are those things that keep showing up? Every 10 years, I have certain things that pop up, and I'll say, "Oh, didn't I do that 10 years ago?" And then, so now you got to start thinking, why is the synchronicity? Why is it coming up now? And if it keeps popping up, maybe it is in fact something that's important or that matters, right? So the question here is, if the goal is the starting point of all of this, personal goals, how do you find your goals? And then we'll ask Jeff the same question.
I get really quiet. I asked for my will to be divined a long time ago. I came into the world differently, and I remember being in the light. So I have a different guidance system. I get real quiet, and I listen for my higher self to guide me on the path that I agreed to, that I remember agreeing to.
Okay.
So that's how I find my way.
And you?
I try to find a first step.
Nice.
You know, what can I do? A quick, hopefully quick story. I've been working on painting and things for the last couple of years, and partly because of you, I was looking at trade shows because we were talking about that on a different topic, and I found that this art expo in New York City in April.
Oh, cool.
And I thought, you know, I've never done anything like this, but I applied to be an exhibitor.
That's cool.
And I found out yesterday, you know, I sent a bunch of examples of my work. Now, so far they've come back and said, this one piece we would accept to exhibit. Now, I don't know if I'm going to actually follow through on it because I don't have the details yet.
Yeah.
But I said, okay, I'm going to put myself out there and I'm going to take this step that is a little scary,
Yeah,
but I'm going to do it because what's the worst that can happen?
exactly.
You know?
Throw it out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I encourage people to find,
And stepping out of your comfort zone is huge.
yeah,
Yeah. And dipping your toe in the water,
Yeah.
somehow.
testing the temperature or whatever. And I think that
Yeah, I
No.
had no idea that this even existed. I found it and I said, okay, let's take a shot. And I would encourage everybody to kind of say, find something, you know, look around, be open to ideas, and see what happens.
And just like today's program is on community, and we talked about a lot of different subjects, and my suggestion is to be a tourist in your own community, look at it from another point of view. That way you can learn more and more and more about what's going on. Be a tourist in your own life. Oh, investigate your own life. Look at what it is that matters to you. Look at what it is that you're doing. Look at where you are and what's happening and what environment you have and how much of that environment did you create yourself.
And then we can hopefully help provide some of the road map to where you want to go.
Yes. So they can tune in, and next week we're going to go in a little bit more depth to one of the first chapters
Yep.
that we're already touched on. But have them all come back.
Have a great week.